I'm Barbara Levin, Executive Director of Neurofibromatosis Mid-Atlantic. We're a 35-year-old nonprofit agency devoted to NF awareness, support, and education. Neurofibromatosis is a genetic disorder that affects about 1 in 2,500 people on a very conservatively. It's a genetic disorder that causes tumors to grow anywhere on the body. In our continuing effort to bring you links and introduce you to resources you may use, I am delighted this morning to introduce you to Julie Hertzog, who is the Director of PACER's National Bullying Prevention Center out of Minneapolis. Julie, welcome.
Barbara, thank you. I'm glad to be part of your program today.
Oh, we're really delighted to have you. And I need not tell you, bullying is a problem. And I know PACER started the National Bullying Prevention Month in October, which we just passed. And if you don't mind, I'm sure you do it a million times a day, but would you give us just a down and dirty on exactly what is bullying?
Yeah, and I'll actually just give a little insight into what PACER is too, because I think that that helps explain bullying as well. PACER, we're a nonprofit located in Minneapolis, and we were formed in the late 1970s when the federal law passed in which students with disabilities could be included in the classroom, and they had the legal right to do so. And so PACER formed an advocacy organization at that time, and PACER is actually an acronym for Parents Advocacy Coalition for Educational Rights. So that's a big mouthful, and we really go by PACER now. That's how we're known. So we have a long history of advocacy for families, especially related to special education. And our connection to bullying came about because in early 2000, we noted that parents of children with disabilities were calling us more and more frequently with really just very heartbreaking stories about bullying. And also just happenstance was that my own son, who was born with Down syndrome, was going into kindergarten at about that same time. And as an organization, we decided we needed to do something. So we've been looking at this at this topic for a long time. And in 2006, we decided to really solidify our efforts and to develop PACER's National Bullying Prevention Center. And at that same time, we did a scan of the resources out there and found that there was no awareness event or, like October's National, Breast Cancer Awareness Month and some other things. And so we actually started, it was a week at that time. And then in 2010, it grew to be a month. But Barbara, getting back to your original question about what is bullying, that definition, I think we really have been looking at that definition, and I think it's evolved over time.
Yes.
And there's not a federal definition at this time. But I always think about bullying. We've got the dictionary definition of it, and we also have our statutes because 49 different states have laws about bullying that look at, especially school bullying in the schools. And so there are some common elements to when we talk about bullying, and the first is obviously that it causes hurt or harm. And that hurt or harm can be physical or emotional. So, we traditionally think about that bigger person hurting a smaller person, but it can also be emotional, such as gossip or excluding someone on purpose or just isolation of others, name calling. Again, emotional can have a social element to it as well. And then the second component is the person who is being targeted by the behavior has difficulty themselves. The third kind of tenet of bullying is that it's intentional. So oftentimes there's an intent on the part of the person who's doing the bullying to hurt the other person. And then the fourth thing is this what we call imbalance of power, which sounds really intimidating, but an imbalance of power is really that maybe somebody is physically larger than somebody else. So it's about having some sort of physical or social power. But it could also be, when we talk about imbalance of power, it could also be that someone's in a social status status group, and we always think of the cool kids at school, cool kids in quotes. They often have more power than other kids, and often, groups of people have more power over just an individual as well. So again, just to summarize, it's that, bullying is about that intentionally hurting or harming someone physically or emotionally. They also have a hard time defending themselves, and there's that imbalance of power is present.
Wow. So am I wrong, or has what has changed? I hear about bullying all the time, and not just with children. Recently with adults, recently with the NFL, even.
Yeah.
And you think a 300-pound man, my goodness, but it appears to be isomorphic, that it is showing up everywhere. Or has awareness increased, and have finally the media, I mean, bullying, I suspect, is as old as the earth, but you would know better. But have people become more aware of it? And how has people's connectivity changed? You hear about cyberbullying, and maybe you could explain that as well.
Yeah, great question. And, I would just start by saying, just anecdotally, I remember in early 2000 when we first started looking at this issue, and I went to, our friend Google, the search engine, and typed in the word bullying. And I would say maybe 100 relevant hits came back. It wasn't significant.
Mm-hmm.
And then being a disability-based organization and particularly looking at how bullying affected students with disabilities, I went and, put in two keywords of bullying and disability. And literally maybe less than 5 relevant hits were returned in that
Wow.
search. So that's early 2000. If I were to go in and do that same search now, be much different results.
Yes.
You know, and the question that you're putting out there is, have things changed? And I would say that if you think back what societally we say about bullying and what maybe my parents told me, maybe even what I have said to my kids unwittingly,
Mm-hmm.
bullying is a rite of passage, or it's just a natural part of
Mm-hmm.
growing up, or, some kids deserve to be bullied. We have all those statements in our society that have reinforced that it's okay for kids to mistreat each other, and that's been passed down and passed down. And I think what's different now is that we as a society have recognized that bullying, um, it's a serious issue with serious impact, not only what happens to kids immediately, but it impacts their educational performance. A lot of kids who are bullied don't want to go to school, or they, aren't able to focus on learning because they don't feel safe. It impacts our kids' health, both emotionally and physically. So not only kids reporting stomach aches and headaches, but also emotionally, where they have a greater increase in anxiety or depression or thoughts of self-harm. And it impacts our kids' sense of safety and well-being. And, now there's research that shows that where there wasn't research years ago. And so definitely we're more aware of it, and I think that's through the media and some of the stories that have been held, that have been put out there, and just also understanding the impact that it does actually have. Or before I think we used to dismiss what the impact was.
Yes. Well, certainly, happily, through organizations like yours and as well as the media, we do realize now that everyone is at risk. And I'm sure there are strategies for doing this, and to I do want to promote, however, you have the Choose Orange campaign. Is that properly? Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, Pacer does do a lot of awareness campaigns because to really look at the issue of bullying, first we need to build that awareness that this is a serious issue, that it does have serious impact. And the way that you do that is start to get the word out there, because by making people aware of things, that's where you start conversations, and conversations are what inspires change and inspires solutions. And so we do look at creative ways to engage people to think about this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And Choose Orange is just one that It's an interesting one because we selected orange as the color of bullying prevention, so it's the color associated with it. And so we have these things that are called they're wristbands, and so they're not the traditional like 1 inch wristbands. They're a lot wider, and you can actually put them on your wrist. You place them on your wrist, and they're by the makers of the people who made Slapwatch, if you've ever are familiar with that. But in the center of the band, it says choose orange. And above that statement, there's a lot of negative words. And once you choose orange, the words turn positive. And
Oh,
so
that's
choosing
great.
orange is about choosing compassion, choosing
Hmm.
tolerance, choosing positivity. And so the
And
the
fun.
the campaign becomes synonymous, and there's
Hmm.
something that the kids are really involved in. And again, it's, strong symbolism there. And
Yes.
and I think what it does is so often we hear from people who are being bullied that they feel alone. And
Mm.
what we want to do is give tangible means of supports for, hey, you're not alone in this. There are people who care about what happens to you.
Well, that's wonderful. And I wore orange just on
Yes,
your
I love
behalf.
it.
Uh, and the fact that it's gotten very cold. But it is, there are so many things ripe for, um, for thought. And subsequently, I want people to go to your website at pacer.org, pacer.org. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also, we will link to you. Will make this video available, but we will also link to you as often as we possibly can, and that is at nfmidatlantic.org. But it is, I could talk to you for a long time, but we won't. We'll keep me wanting more. And Julie Hertzog. I am so delighted that you joined us today. Thank you so much, and you're fighting the good fight against bullying, and hopefully we're trying to keep people aware of neurofibromatosis in the same breath. All positives. So I thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you.